because it's like I've not got my phone now.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining. Just having a wee off-screen joke there about the calculator, but
I've got a big calculator now. I tell you what, though. Oh, that's all you need to work things out. Just a nice big calculator with big buttons, a memory plus and a minus and all the rest of it, and the numbers. That's all you need to work out your yields and returns on investment and stuff like that. Fair enough, you've got a spreadsheet. But this is why I ordered this, because this is the accountant's tool. Yeah, this is how I think in a nutshell. The accountant's tool, the calculator, it does everything for you that you could do. Yeah, sorry, Richard.
No, you're fine. No, that's fine. We will need it today. We're going to obviously cover is buy-to-let really worth it, and really break that down. We're going to look at mortgage rates. We're going to look at inflation, ADS, obviously, which we are aware is now 6% in Scotland. Yep. We're going to look at yields and stress testing, occupancy rates, and capital appreciation. So a lot to cover today, Jim. We're going to be quite interactive. Please, everybody watching, if you have questions or not sure about something that we're covering, jump in the comments and we will do our best to explain that and cover questions at the end as well.
As ever, you better get a notebook out and a pen and paper.
Yeah.
At least, because there's loads and loads of information you could take down here, and it's like, I could watch it back again. It's like, save yourself the time. Retention is far greater improved, memory retention, if you actually listen to it, repeat it back to yourself, and also write it down, and you retain it a lot better. And this is what I was taught from all my mentors years ago about memory retention. Write everything down. I used to turn up to everything and write everything down in pads and papers, and I would probably never look at it ever again. But the reality is, it made absolute sense because memory retention is key here. Remember, we'll keep all questions till the end. If you've got any questions or comments you want to make, please feel free to do them. We'll cover them all at the end for you as well, and answer all your questions as well. And Richard, over to you. We're talking about mortgage rates, inflation, ADS, unemployment levels as well.
Yeah, that's a good one. I didn't put that on the agenda, but you're right, Jim. Yeah.
By the way, the shit's going to hit the fan. And that's no to get you hooked in to listen to this. This is the shit that's going to hit the fan. I'm beginning to think, wait a minute, and now I'm actually seeing facts and figures backing this up. And I'll go through my process when we talk about some of these different things I've just mentioned, but it actually leads me to believe it's going to hit the fan. So the key in the message here is, when the tide goes out, you're going to be swimming naked. Because I'm not going to be.
Yeah. So, and the only way to prevent that is obviously to look at your portfolio, your investment and things, and stress test it before you make purchases, and look at the risk involved to make sure that you are risk adverse, basically. Just quickly, Jim, you touched on unemployment. What unemployment rate is it? Did you say 3.7?
3.7.
Yeah. So
let's talk about inflation and all that first. This is all first on your list.
Yeah.
Mortgage rates as well.
Rates.
Buy-to-let mortgage rates. Unfortunately for the people on Instagram and TikTok, you're not going to see this because we're going to be sharing it on the screen. But I'm actually going to share information, and we're going to look at the mortgage works. We're going to look at the Birmingham Midshires possibly as well. See what the current buy-to-let rates are right now for limited companies and for individuals, and that will give us this will give us an initial profile about the information we need to put into the spreadsheet. So I'm going to be doing quite a lot. If you do want to see these spreadsheets straight away right now, I suggest you maybe jump onto YouTube at the same time, and you will see it live on YouTube, or you jump onto LinkedIn, or you can go into my Facebook pages on my public profiles for official Jim Parker, or Jim Parker dog's body to everybody. I'll clean the toilet if it furthers my cause. I'll go out there and do what's necessary to get that done, and I literally mean it. I have cleaned many a toilet over the years just to prove that point, and washed many a window as well. While I'm fully suited and booted, and everybody's walking past, going, "Wait a minute, what's going on?" Aye. They're in a different field. I'm on a different playing field, by the way, in terms of how I think, in terms of where I develop wealth, in terms of how I develop wealth. And this is the secrets we're discussing right now and how we do it. So this is a masterclass, kind of where the thought process is right now in terms of, is buy-to-let really worth it? Looking at all the indicators, key indicators in the economy right now, and coming to some conclusions about where we are, and not just coming up with comments like, I do see, and I've got to say, Alan, I know you've probably got facts and figures to back that up, but Alan says on TikTok, the Great Depression is upon us. Well, okay, let's prove that if that's the case. Let's see the facts and figures. I would love to see what you think about this, Alan, and where you think your facts and figures are. And it's not just someone else's opinion that we've grabbed and thought, we'll jump on that, because Robert Kiyosaki or Grant Cardone or all these different people say, oh, the Great Depression is upon us. Okay, right, explain to me why it's upon us. Show me the facts and figures to suggest that and where we're actually going. And literally, that's why I say the shit could be hitting the fan. But we'll see. We'll see. So tune in. Right. Let's talk about mortgage rates.
Mortgages, yeah.
Where are we right now with mortgage rates, actually? Let's quickly jump on. I've got another screen here for Google, and I'm going to go in the Mortgage Works. If I could find them, give me a second. I'm going to show you this in a minute. There's the Mortgage Works right there. I've got my wee drop-down menu. I'm going to share the screen. We'll take a note.
So why the Mortgage Works, Jim, just for people out there?
It's the biggest lender. It's the biggest lender in buy-to-let lending. They've kind of got a handle on this. They know exactly how to get things through the system quickly. They know how to get you approved quickly. Birmingham Midshires is another one. Mortgage Works is owned by the Nationwide. Birmingham Midshires is owned by Lloyds. And they're the two biggest buy-to-let lenders in the country. So these are the mainstream ones you'd usually go to. Anybody else outside of that typically is specialist buy-to-let lenders, which means, and as soon as something says specialist, price goes up. Interest rate goes up. It's a higher value. So if you can get the mainstream lenders, you tend to find you get the best deals with them. But again, there is some deals that mortgage brokers, like, for example, Kessa Salimi of Freedom Financial Group in Dundee, there is some deals that they can get that no one else gets, because what they're trying to do, the banks, is they're trying to get rid of the people that do the mortgages for them. So they've not got the labour cost, and they're trying to outsource it to mortgage brokers who run their own businesses. And in order to incentivize them, what they do is they give them specialist products that are not available to their own people. So you can actually possibly get a better lending rate and maybe free legals and stuff like that through them, because you can see they can save the money on the fact that they've not got people employed to do that. So they save the money on that, but that's how they're able to give it to a mortgage broker, because that's how they make their money. But everybody wins, because the mortgage broker gets a slice, and then they only pay the mortgage broker when they get business.
Yeah,
that's a good business model, isn't it? That's commission. It's like that's probably one of the best business models going. Commission. You only get something if we get something as well. If you don't get anything, we're not getting anything either. Yeah. So there's an incentivization there for a mortgage broker to get business. So they give them the tools to do that and give them the products to do that as well. So let's jump on Mortgage Works and have a wee look at that. There's a screen there. Quickly jump onto the calculators. Product find. Let's look at just buy to let. Select criteria type, buy to let. Select product. So search by client type. Now we're just going to tick all the boxes: fixed, tracker, variable, 1 year, 5 year, lifetime, 10 years, 2 years, maximum loan to values, minimum loan to values with and without fees, purchase. We're assuming it's going to be a purchase in the beginning, but I suppose you can have further. You can have remortgages in further advance as well, but we'll just go with purchase because this is obviously what we're looking at. So the best product right now in your own name, you've got 75% loan to value. Obviously, you want to finance as much as possible, more than likely. I think that's the mentality at this point in time, because this is how I think. 75% loan to value, 2% fee, 3.89 fixed for 1 year. I'm not a big fan because you can get a 2 year fixed rate. But see that, how it's gone up to 3% at a maximum loan to value is 65%.
Yeah.
See how they've done that? And see how it's jumped up to 4.09 for 2 years at 75% loan to value, but 3%. So they're not being very favourable now to people in their own names. They're asking for 3% arrangement fee. So they're deliberately keeping the fees down. You see that? Because base rates are at 4%. But they're deliberately keeping the fees down, but they're getting everything up front from you. They're getting arrangement fees, which is 3% of whatever you're getting. So if you're getting an £80,000 mortgage, you're paying £2,500. Now, if you take that £2,500 and take that over the 2 years of the 80 grand, 2500, use my calculator, Can it come in handy? Divided by 80, 1, 2, 3, 4, equals another 3%. So over 2 years, that represents, divided that by 2, equals another 1.56% on that 4.09. See how they do that?
Mm-hmm.
So the 1.56%, 1.56 plus, I know it's daft to do that, but 4.09 equals, you're actually paying a rate of 5.65% over the 2 years, fixed. You're not paying 4.09 really, because you're paying 3% up front. And I would say because you're paying that money up front, you're losing the value of the inflation as well on it, the destruction in debt on the inflation. Right. So you're losing 10% each year if inflation stays at 10% for the next 2 years. So you're actually, the value of that money you're paying up front in today's real terms, what you can use in 2 years' time, if that was over the interest period, the value of that would be £500 less in 2 years' time if it was 10% each year.
Right, okay.
Because you're £2,500 and 10% of that right now is £250. And in an ideal world, we're just assuming 10% each year. So £500. So that's only worth £2,000 if you were paying it over a period of time. But because you're paying it up front, you're actually paying £2,500 now. When if inflation erodes it, it's worth less. So you'd be better to, if you can get your arrangement fees added on, it's a good possibility you might be able to do that. Then my answer to that would be add them on. But in this case,
that would be a much better way of doing it.
In this case, it's 3% actually. I was wrong. It's not 2%. It's actually 3%.
Mm-hmm.
So 3% on the loan. Which is 2.5 in there. Yeah. So that real terms in real terms is 5.65% over the 2 years. So we've got that so far. They've all got arrangement fees on them. I don't see any zeros. There's a zero at 6.65% loan to value. I'm really looking for a zero with arrangement fee with none. There's none. There's none. That's it. That's the 65%. They're not actually doing anything. So this is what they're deliberately doing. They're keeping the fees low to get you on board, but they're also getting a lot of money up front from the arrangement fees or getting it added onto the mortgage to get them more money.
Yeah.
So they're just playing with numbers and spinning it. But it's to let you buy the product. That's the key here. Because if they price themselves at the market at 5 and 6%, then they're obviously their market's going to go right down to a minimal amount. And they're in the business of lending. So they want to be as creative as possible. We will talk about my 1.9 million and how I can get 100% funding on that. But we'll probably talk about that towards the end of the show.
I've got that noted for us to maybe touch on at the end if we've got time, Jim.
So we've got 5-year deals at 5.09. To be honest, I would probably go for the 5-year deal.
I was just going to say, where would you go with this?
2-year deal. Look, base plus 1.99, 2-year deal tracker, 75% with no amount. There's a tracker, a 2-year deal, 65%. There's a 10-year at 5.19. So there's a 10-year, 5.19, 10 years. Remember when it for the long term?
I was just going to say, yeah. So
10 years, there's no fee. I always think it's a con, the fee up front. Because if you pay the fee up front to try and get a cheaper rate, the difference between the cheaper rate and the rate you would get with and without the fee, it usually works out every single time that the fee is not having the fee is actually better. Because see how the fees added 1.5% on there?
Yeah.
On that interest rate. So over 2 years, it's an extra 1.5%. But the next one up from there, you'll probably find, if I scroll back there and look at that one again. So we're 5-year, we're 3%. The next one up from there without the fee, if there's a 2-year deal, and we'll look for a 2-year deal without the fee. There's a 10-year at 4.99. There's a 10-year at 4.99 actually. Wow. Oh, that's 65%. There's a 5-year at there. There's a 2-year. So there's a 2-year there with no fee, 75% loan to value at 5.19 now. So you know how I said it's 5.65 if you take the arrangement fee.
Yeah.
This is actually no fee over 2 years, and it's 5.19. So it tells you straight away that you'd actually be better to take that product over the 2-year period.
So would you say the 2 years better than the 10-year? What would you think? What would you opt for?
It depends on personal preference. So the personal preference here will be, if you're in it for the medium to long term, and you're actually concerned about interest rates going up or down because that could make or break you, then you want to fix it for the length of time possible that you then become unconcerned.
Mhm.
Personally, I'll talk about base rates in a minute and where I think that's going. Interest rates. Actually, we've not got it in there, have we? Interest rates. Okay, this is on the back of inflation. I predict and I think that interest rates are going to go up again.
Right.
Base rates. And I'll tell you why that is when we come to inflation. And also unemployment. I'll write down just so I know that. Unemployment figures. So we've got deals there. We've got a deal at 10 years at 5.19. We've got a deal with no fee at 75% loan to value. We've got a deal there at possibly, I saw a 5 year. See, there's, no, that's a 65%. We have, as I said, I'm no big fan of paying fees up front because it doesn't usually work out like that. There's a 10 year, there's a 5 year, there's a 2 year, there's a 2 year. So 5.19, and that's a tracker. And that's no fee. Because we need as much money as possible to finance. Because you can make, if you can make a return on the money you've got, why would you pay the arrangement fee then? Because it's just eroding the returns that you can make. Because if you're making 15% or maybe 10%, and you're having to pay that money out, then, and you're only paying it on a 5% deal, then you're making a 5% differential. That make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So 2 year deal. And let's look for a 5 year deal, because that'll then, when we go to the spreadsheet, we'll look at that 5 year deal. Did we see a 5 year with nothing? 5 year, 65% loan to value.
I didn't think there's any wait a minute.
I did see something about 5 year deal. I'm sure I saw 5 year none. 5 year none.
5 year none, there you go.
5.29.
5.29.
And that's a 5 year. And that's fixed. And that's a 75%. So that's where we are right now with that. Now let's jump onto limited companies, because that's in your own name, remember. So we'll jump onto limited companies next. Limited company buy to let, and let's just see what they've got in there. Do the same thing. See, the limited companies, they're almost good. They're better. Oh my God, they are. Flipping heck, they look better.
Oh, aye, they do. So there's.
Let's look at for the zero again. The zero. There's a first none 5 year fixed rate deal. 5.89 for a 5 year. That's only 0.6% extra for a limited company now. Now, Richard, that's a huge thing, because before you were talking about a 2% differential between you and your own name and actually a limited company, and it's actually got really tight now. So it's 5.89 now. It's only 0.6% more, and you're actually being hedged against this because your taxation is more favourable on your interest-only payments, because you don't Section 24 lower deduction of interest on lower rate on mortgage interest payments is not applicable to limited companies. So there's a huge benefit there to have a limited company incorporated. So there's a 5 year fixed rate deal at 5.89. Can we see any more? 10 year, 2 year?
There's a 2 year at 75, so that's 6.39. Yeah.
And then we've got, do we see a 10 year there?
Nope.
No. I tell you what, though, there's not many products, is there?
No, there's only a few there in comparison, yeah.
There's absolutely nothing. So they're actually limiting the limited companies. Excuse the pun. So there's no 10 year deals available on limited companies. What does that say? Nervous, I think, maybe nervousness. It's a different exposure to them. Maybe they're nervous about the long-term situation. The very fact that they've got it in your name suggests that they could take everything because you're personally liable and guarantee for it, if it's in your own name. But equally, and under a limited company, you're still the same thing. You know, you're still liable because they can get guarantees on you for a limited company as well. Personal guarantees, by the way. So when you sign a mortgage on behalf of a limited company, you're actually not getting the anonymity of limited. In other words, the fact that they won't come for you because you've personally signed on it. They actually get directors' guarantees on it, so you're liable for it as well, personally liable on your lending. Now, the reason that they do that is because they make sure that you're a director of the company. That's how they can do it. So they'll only loan money to you on a limited company if you're the director of the company.
The director,
because they know they can take it. Because remember, director has fiduciary duties. So let me just explain that. I'll go on the big screen. A director has fiduciary duties towards the stewardship of the company under company law. Therefore, they have to, when they enter into contracts, they've got a legal binding obligation to make sure that they know at that point in time that the company can actually pay that and fulfill these obligations. If they don't, then they could still be personally liable under legislation, which actually what happens is if you do something which they think is, untoward and you've fraudulently done it, they can lift the veil on the company. That's what they call it. In other words, see what was behind it and see what was the real truth of what actually happened in that transaction. And if it turns out that the director has actually deliberately engineered that, they can be personally liable and personally prosecuted for anything, and even under criminal legislation. That's why you see some directors getting struck off.
Yeah.
So we are so far on. We've got our rates, okay.
Yeah, we've got our own, and we've got the limited company ones, right? Okay.
We don't need to go to the Birmingham shares and all the rest of it. There's no point. They're going to be the same. They're all more or less the same. They'll give you freebies to try and attract you, just like petrol companies do when they used to do points in supermarkets and stuff like that as well. Inflation.
Yes.
Inflation's a good one. So let's talk about inflation. How's inflation going to affect the housing market? Well, inflation last month or the month before was 10.7 or something like that.
Yeah.
It's dropped to 10.1 right now.
10.1 just now, yeah.
Yeah. But interestingly enough, inflation, the biggest threat to inflation, and I'll dig it out here somewhere. I've got it on an email because I did actually deliberately kept an indicator for me here, a link, which I thought, I'll come up with that, and I'll see where we are. So inflation. Let me just talk you through this. Consumer Price Index. Copy. Actually, we can just go in the same post. I'll put it in there, and here, paste. Put it in there. This is BBC News. This is where I get all my data. Let's share this screen now. So this is the news for BBC. See that? What is UK inflation rate, and why is the cost of living rising? So this is actually quite interesting. So this is showing you where I get all my facts and figures, and it's just I collect all the data together and make my own assumptions based on what I think is what's going to happen or potentially might happen, or minimize the risk of if it happens, I'm okay. And so inflation, it was updated the other day, and so inflation, which prices are rising, has dropped back slightly, but inflation still remains at a 40-year high. Now, how's it measured? Well, it's sports and goods and all the rest of it. It's a whole load of products they put together and they do it. But see that graph? Look at where it was in 2014. It was only about maybe 2%, coming down to 2% in 2014, goes down to 0% in 2015, goes up to 2018. It goes up to about 3%. It goes right down to 0% again in 2020, and then it accelerates like that.
Yeah.
Now, that acceleration process has happened because of quantitative easing. And it's because we've pumped billions into the economy, and we've actually not taken it back out.
Yeah, I was going to say, just to explain quantitative easing, obviously, for people that maybe aren't.
What happens if the government wants to prop up the economy, or they want to keep things going, and they don't want a market to drop, for example, the housing market at the time, or the employment market, and keep everybody employed, they had to pay people on furlough in order, because they weren't working doing anything. But then they've got to go and buy goods and services, and if they don't buy goods and services, these companies are out of business as well. And it's to avoid a catastrophic, basically, never mind a depression. It's like that is the end of everything. Or the capitalist system no longer exists. Adam Smith, you never predicted this, and what would happen in this situation. We are wealthy nations. So this is why they had to pump money into the economy. So that's what they did, quantitative easing. They printed money, and then they've made more money. So if you've got, say, for example, this is how quantitative easing works. If you've got 100 million, and you've got 100 million GDP. So in other words, gross domestic product, which is what's been generated in the economy. You've got 100 million getting generated, and you're able to buy 100 million pounds worth of goods, and there's only 100 million pounds worth of goods getting made. Then it's easy to buy one another, and there's no inflationary aspect to that. But if you introduce another 100 million, you've got double the amount of money chasing half the amount of goods.
Right, okay.
Yeah, that's why inflation goes up. Because what happens is all these people are chasing these goods, therefore they run out of the goods, therefore they have to try and make more goods potentially, but they can't make more goods, so they put the price up as a result of that. And it's called supply and demand. That's how economics works. So as demand is more, prices go up, and you can see that in the housing market when when lockdown and after lockdown it just boomed.
Yeah,
and we saw that coming. So that's how quantitative easing works, and that's how inflation works. And in an ideal world, there's a lot more complex details to that.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of other factors involved in it, but the basis is
pound chasing the product is now only worth 90. Can now only buy 90 pence of that product if inflation is at 10%.
Right. Okay.
Okay. So why are prices rising so fast? Cost of energy is another key factor in here. But look at the biggest contributors to inflation. Now, this is mind-blowing. Remember, this is 10.1% in January. But household bills have gone up over the year 26.7%. Food and drinks gone up 16.7%. Restaurants and hotels, 10.8%. And then it gets down to the periphery. Furniture, health, clothing, others, tobacco, recreation, education, transport, communication. All the things that we don't really need are all below inflation. All the things that we really need are above inflation. So we're going to still keep buying these things, and it means that we need more money for that reason. So you can see how inflation is going to be a problem. Now, let me explain to you. Inflation's at 10.1 now. People are putting their hand out to get more money because I can't buy the goods I bought before. I can't live the lifestyle I had before because I need more money to do it. So they put their hand out to the employer or their customer and say, you've got to pay more for your goods, or to the employer, you've got to pay more for your people, the skills that we've got. If the employer relents and says, okay, I'll give you 5%, he then has to put 5% on the price his product. Now, depending on what percentage of the labour content is in that product, this is because I was in manufacturing and understand this.
Yeah.
Maybe that percentage made up 30% of that product. So if that made up 30% of that product, then he has to put 30% of that 5% onto that product. So 5 times 0.3 equals 1.5. So he would have to put his price up by 1.5. But if everybody else is doing it, then the raw material goes up at your buying. The overheads go up at your buying, like the services, like the telecoms, everything else that goes. Mm-hmm. So technically, then everything has to go up 5%. Therefore, the price has to go up 5% to reflect that. If the price goes up by 5%, it goes back into the market. And then what happens is when you come along to buy it, you now go, oh, I got 5%, but inflation's pushed that price up.
Yeah.
I can't buy it anymore. I can't buy it anymore. I'm going to have to get more money. See that?
Yeah.
So this could end up be a cyclical movement if it's not kept under control. And that's why the government's reluctant to actually pay over 10%, because all they'll be doing is actually just providing you more money to create more inflation.
Yeah, and to push it up. Yeah.
And it goes in a big spiral, and it doesn't go down, it goes up till there's this giant monster of inflation. But at the same time as inflation is going, what happens next is the people, the vulnerable and the poor, who are supported by the system,
are the ones that suffer.
And also the NHS and all the public servants who are supported by the people that actually go out and work in jobs in the private sector and make goods and services and sell them. They then have to pay the public servants, the educators, the bin people, the housing services and all the rest of it, all these people that work on your behalf and public servants and local authority. We have to then pay them more money and also the people on benefits. So because they can't afford anything there. So they're in the same situation as us. We need more money. Where do you think that money is going to come from?
All right, okay. So that's going to come. It's going to come back out the pocket of people that's obviously paying their national insurance and things.
Tax.
Yeah.
So therefore, your tax goes up. Your tax has to go up to reflect that. So you're getting taxed more. So not only have you got inflation eating away at your income, you've also got now tax eating away at your income.
Yeah.
So therefore, you're even worse off. You go back to your employer and go, I need more money. And you can see how that spiral happens.
It's a vicious circle, yeah.
Yeah. Vicious. I think vicious is a polite way of saying that. It is completely detrimental to our economy and how our system works. Now, there's an argument whether it should work in a capitalist society or not like this. And maybe we should move to a more, everybody has wealth and everybody creates wealth for the good of everybody else.
Yeah.
And we all live together in peace and harmony.
Never going to happen.
Utopian world.
Utopian, yeah.
That utopian world. People have tried that, and you'll get the capitalists going, that's communism, that's socialism. It's like, where does that? Yeah, it possibly is, but it could work in some societies, and it does. You've got kibbutz, in Israel, where you go out and you work for the betterment of the community. Everybody lives off the land and enjoys their lifestyle, and they want for nothing really, because they don't value material possessions like the capitalist society does. Things. We buy things to impress people we don't like. Where is that mentality? Look what I've got on Instagram. I've got a new car. It's like, you're probably the only person that cares. So that's how inflation erodes everything. And plus the inflation begins to erode savings. It begins to erode, it also begins to erode pensions. Because if pensions don't keep up with that, then the value of your pension is worth a lot less than when you actually get it out at the end. So you can see how inflation is the biggest threat we've got to manage. And the government and the Bank of England the Bank of England has got full autonomy on this, will do everything within their power to actually control inflation. This brings me to unemployment.
Yeah.
This is a tie-in here. Here's the strong correlation between unemployment, inflation, and mortgage rates or base rates. Unemployment is at 3.7%. It is at a record low. That much a record low since 1971. That is effectively 50 years of 50 years. It's been for, never in 50 years has it been at a record low like this. Now you think about a business, about unemployment levels being at that level, and that's classed as called full employment, and it's way beyond full employment, to be honest. That's really full employment between 4 and 6% in economic terms. And what full employment means that you're actually, the number of people available for jobs and the number of jobs available are more or less the same. And it only takes the number of people looking for jobs to be able to retrain to do the other jobs or in between, so they can fill them perfectly. That's full employment in an economy. Now, if you have full employment in an economy, think about this. If you've got full employment, how are you going to grow the sales if you can't bring any more people or employ any more people?
Because you need more manpower to do that.
Yeah. So if you've got record low unemployment levels and you've not got enough people to work, you can't generate enough money to bring in more tax to pay the bills. For everybody wants more money, and everybody wants for the NHS to be a lot better, the education system to be a lot better. And this is where it comes down to, Brexit or no Brexit, it comes down to a proper immigration policy. In other words, to bring the right people in with the skill set in order to work in our economy, to generate more money, to generate more taxes. That's the only way you can do that. And because of Brexit, we're not doing that. That's a worry. So you can't increase your sales. So what do you need to do next if you can't increase your sales, if you're trying to balance the books?
Start paying people.
Well, you've got it about right. The balance the books, you have to then cut costs. The biggest things for cutting costs in most manufacturing companies, as I know, is labour. It's the first thing you go for. It's a huge amount of the cost of a product is labour. This is why there's a drive to be so efficient, and this is why there's a drive to make 30% efficiencies in the economy in the years to come.
Is that obviously down the route of like
automation? Automation, definitely. It is coming whether you like it or not. Now, just to go on a bit more about that, then, if you can't increase your salary or increase your income anymore, and you have to cut costs, you've got nowhere else to go with that. So you have to cut costs whether you like it or not to balance the books, especially if you've borrowed and given away all that money. So we're in a bit of a sticky situation here. And where it could go, I do not know, but it could end up hitting the fan because of that, because you can't get any lower in unemployment levels. And if you get any higher in unemployment levels, people are getting laid off, so you're generating less taxes. So see how it can only go down?
Yeah.
You can only go down when you've got less money, actually, to look after the services you've got. So if you've over-leveraged yourself, possibly like the UK economy's done, maybe. Now, I've been hearing that, but I've never seen evidence of that. I've not seen it in black and white, if that makes sense. Everybody keeps saying it. We've borrowed so much money. We've got trillions. Okay, what does that put that into context of versus GDP? In other words, what's the balance sheet? What assets have we got? What liabilities have we got? And have we got a true net worth there, or are we sitting on negative value? Because that's a sticky situation for any business to have a negative balance sheet and be in a position like this. So there's only one way to go with that, is to lose jobs, potentially, if you are, or keep it the same, and you'll generate. But then this is where if you've got to spend more money, you've got to generate more taxes. Therefore, you've got to eat the rich.
Yeah.
And if you start eating the rich, you're on a hiding to nothing, because the rich then go, I tell you what, I'll just move somewhere else, or I'll sell up and I'll no bother. There's no point in doing it. Why would I need to bother anymore? That's the worry you've got to worry about. There's more millionaires left this country than come into the country in the last few years. And everybody goes, good riddance to you. I bet they take their money with them.
They take the money, The money goes with them.
Essentially, they're taking their business with them as well, because they're not spending it in your economy anymore. Therefore, your GDP goes down. That's what you've got to worry about. Now, coming back to that then, if employment stays as it is, so because there's only two things that could happen. There's a recession and there's interest rate rises. There's only two things you can really balance inflation through: recession and interest rate rises, or unemployment, or covering back. So as I said before in a previous show we did about the UK economy and about the housing market, the best scenario would have been a mild recession and reasonable interest rate base rate rises. The one thing you don't want is one or the other, because one or the other is severe and extreme, and it will affect other anyway, which will have a knock-on effect to the housing market as well, which you don't want, because there's so much money piled into the housing market. A lot of people rely on it for income as well. So there's unemployment levels which could affect things, and that will stay the same. So the only way the Bank of England's got to curb inflation is now, because unemployment's they were surprised that unemployment stayed by that as well. And there's two indicators here as well. And you've got to think retail sales, December retail sales, the city actually went, oh, surprisingly, it was better than expected.
It was better than different, yeah.
And they said the same thing in January as well. And if retail sales are like that, that means people are still buying.
And do you think are people buying more, or do you think the cost of things has just went up and that's why profits in retail and things are up? Or
I think we've got to curb our spending, each individual. I think people are still borrowing on credit cards, to be honest.
Yeah, I think a lot of what people done at Christmas would have been borrowed money.
Crazy idea. I'll just borrow it and I could pay it back £100 a month. It's not going to hurt me. It'll be no bother. It will be a bother if you lose your job.
Yeah,
that's the reality. That's what you should have thought about, because that's what could end up being.
I think borrowing.
I'm only highlighting what might happen.
Yeah,
and there's only one thing that can happen, and that's what the future will unfold. But despite the fact that the Bank of England has said, the Governor of the Bank of England says, we're going to recession, we're still not even in a recession. So what happened to the recession? It didn't happen, which makes me think, because of this, and because of unemployment record lows, because of mortgage rates still giving away so much cheap debt, and borrowing going on out there, because they've been left to their own devices again. They've been, they can do it. I think base rates are going to have to go up again.
Yeah, I think that's quite an educated assumption, to be honest. And I think, like you say, borrowing and being able to put yourself in debt is just so easily and readily available to anybody now. So people just borrow when they've not really thought about the long-term process, how it's going to affect them financially. And like you say, Jim, people borrow quite a lot, and then what if you do lose your job? But so people need to be a bit more smarter, I think, on that end.
At this point in time, when you lost your job, you're just going to be able to pick up another one, no bother. But if there's a few people losing a job and unemployment goes up again, then you've got a problem. However, remember, pre-pandemic, unemployment levels were sitting about 5 or 6%. So this could almost double, and we could just be back where we were before. But it's because we've borrowed and printed so much money. That's the problem. We've now, we're talking about, we're just going back to there, 2 or 3 years ago, and that was all right then. But that wasn't all right. That was all right then, but we hadn't borrowed so many billions, and we still have to pay that back. So as a business, as a UK PLC, we've got to pay all that debt back. And then how does the money markets respond? How does the rest of the world respond to about our credit rating, and the knock-on effect of that as well? So they then, Standard & Poor's come in and go, by the way, we're going to give you a credit rating, we're going to downgrade you from AAA to AA or A. And we actually are now saying, your economy might be quite adverse. Therefore, what happens is, in order for the UK to borrow any money again, we have to pay more higher rates because risk is higher. That's why it's important to make sure you balance it. Plus, as well, what's going to be coming. Colin actually says it there, households amassed savings during lockdown. There was £180 billion worth of savings in households during lockdown amassed. That's still getting spent right now. Like the world is ending tomorrow. People are spending it. And then you've got all these wage deals that have been negotiated on last year's wages that have not even been taken into account to put into the system yet. So if you've got all that money chasing too few goods, what's going to happen when the government settles all their public sector pays? Boom.
Yeah, it's just going to go up, yeah.
Inflation again. And the Bank of England's determined, and I understand why they're determined to do that, because of just what I've explained. They're determined to bring it down. And they'll do anything to bring it down. They will keep raising base rates, by the way, if that's the case.
If that's what they need to do, yeah.
You won't be able to stop them. So this is why I recommend to most people at this point in time, if base rates go up another couple of percentage points, stress test yourself. If you think that would put you under extreme pressure in your situation, possibly fixing your rates are the best thing to do right now. Especially if you're getting, even on your own mortgage, you're getting 3.99 and 3.75% fixed rate deals for 5 years on your own residential properties. That's mental. And then you're looking at buy to let as it stands right now, and you're getting 5% deals for 5 and 10 years. Yeah, that's cheap money. That's a recipe for disaster, by the way.
Yeah.
We'll not have another credit crunch unless there's so much lent into it. Because remember, there's £7 trillion worth of houses in equity in Britain, but there's only about 1.6 trillion in debt against them. So even if house prices drop by 20% or even 50%, your debt to equity ratio is still covered if it dropped by 50%.
Yeah, and that's not going to happen.
No. Well, never say never.
No, but I mean,
you never know. As a buy-to-let landlord, if it ever happened, it wouldn't make any difference to me one way or the other. The bank in 5 years' time would come in and say, look, we're needing you to pay off that debt or get it down to a reasonable level where the equity we agreed in the beginning, 60% loan to value. See how I do 60% loan to value?
Yeah.
Because I'm comfortable at that level. I'm no out there to. I blazed the trail in the beginning and did 90%, 80%, and all the rest of it when I first started. And now it's like, whoa! Now I can do this. It's Monte Carlo or bust. But I tell you what, let's put some provisos on there.
Yeah.
And build that in. So hopefully that's explained to you the current situation where we are right now. Now let's jump onto spreadsheets.
Well, that was really good, Jim. I think that's quite a good explanation for people, when I think, because it is confusing for people how inflation works and how it all ties together, and the economy, obviously how it all works. So it's quite good to get an insight, like you just went through the other now.
Jump onto Zoopla. Jump onto Zoopla. Here, I'll share it now, and we'll show you how I quickly look for property. This is how I looked for property in the early days. I just jumped into places like Zoopla, and I went straight to the Fife. Just do Fife, for example, or you could do Glasgow or wherever you are, Aberdeen, anything like that. Do search straight away, and I'm a cheapskate, and I change it right to the lowest price first, and then I look at the lowest price first, and then I go up from there. That land's been on there for about 10 years.
Oh, that's been on a long time. I think the lowest one that's going to come up is 44th. There's one at 33.5, and then
there's a studio flat for sale at Fordall Road in Glenrothes.
Yeah.
At 35.5 grand. There's no ADS on that because it's 40 grand and below.
You won't get a mortgage, obviously, at 33.5. It would have to be.
No, you have to cash for that.
Yeah.
That could be a good deal, but there might be something needing done to it. There's a couple of
44,000 in Buckhaven's the next one, yeah. Because obviously I keep.
Is that decent at all?
Yeah, it needs a new kitchen, though. I've looked at it.
Wow, bathroom looks good, eh?
Yep, it's quite a decent one actually.
That'd be a great example. 44,000.
I've pitched it to a couple of people over the last few weeks.
Well, they better hurry up then. If you better hurry up then, because I've got a funny feeling that somebody else might buy this now.
Yeah. So the kitchen's a wee bit tired, but
I tell you what, new worktops, you paint the kitchen, you'd get away with that.
Yeah.
Depends what market you're going for, but the bathroom's nice.
Yeah.
And the garden's decent enough size about the back garden, and
and I've got a couple in the street that we let successfully, so that's a good one.
The problem is with this 44,000 is you're not going to get this for a mortgage, because mortgage companies are usually 50,000 minimum valuation. So you might want to buy this, do it up, hold on to it for 6 months, remortgage it. That's when you get your money back out, because you'll probably get a higher valuation at that time, just at the 50,000 mark or thereabouts, to allow you to happen. But we'll take that 44,000 into account. What would that get in rent, Richard?
2-bed flat, you're talking 475.
That's a 2-bed.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Why's nobody snapped this up?
I know. I've looked at it a couple of times.
What? That's crazy. This is a 2-bed, and it's on at 44 grand. So the rental wise,
475.
Wow. So we'll keep that now, and then we'll just jump back to these scenarios again. Just jump back to search results, and we'll look for the next one. There's a 50, that's a land. There's a 50 Pratt Street, Kirkcaldy. There's a Pratt Street, Kirkcaldy.
I'm keen on Pratt Street. It's not the best.
It's not the best, but I'm having a wee quick look through it, and okay, it's a wee bit of an effort. It probably is an ex buy to let, but I mean that would work, wouldn't it? A wee bit of tartan up. So we'll say 50 grand for that one. How much would that get in? Probably 475 again.
Yeah, I mean maybe 450. Well, because Kirkcaldy, so 475.
Yeah, 475.
Although Pratt Street is not the best in Kirkcaldy, but it does. I mean, it does look like it's a previous rental. This one's on the cross at Windigate. It's right on the main road, but it has been done up quite nice. But it's a bit of a studio setup, that one. So,
what would that get in rent?
1 bed's in there. You're probably still about 350, 375.
375. Oh, brand new kitchen.
It's all been done new.
I tell you what, that is a good one, eh?
It used to be the shop, and they've converted it.
Yeah, does that look like electric panel heaters though?
Yeah, it's electric heat.
Electric. I'm no fan, eh?
I mean, some of the new panel heaters are quite good, but
when you get to an EPC, you know the rest of it.
You need to think in EPC levels.
So there's another one. There's Station Road in Kelty, 55 grand. So we are still tolerable at these sort of prices in terms of where we are. Let's look and see if we've got any mid-market ones. There's a 58 Kirkgate. Now, again, these are the numbers.
There's a few in and around.
1 bed, Norman Street, Dyser, 2-bed. You've not got any houses?
There's a couple up in Methil Hill just now if you keep going.
There's a 2-bedroom cottage, Kelly Street, Methil.
That needs work.
How much work though? That doesn't look. That looks no bad.
It's not too bad, but I think have I seen the home report for this one? I think there was damp works and things to get done in it. There was work definitely on that one.
Right. Okay. Let's skip that. 2-bedroom terrace house, Craigmount. Hi, Craigmount Kirkcaldy is no bad.
Yeah. When was that listed? I've not seen that.
Looks a wee bit worse for wear, but I tell you what. Oh, electric heating, see it?
Yeah.
You've got the storage heaters, so you probably need to put bathrooms. Yeah, it's a bit dated, bit antiquated, but you know what? Maybe a good 7,000, 10 grand heating system, bathroom and kitchen.
Yeah, at least I think to get that to where you want it to be. Yeah.
So let's look at something that's got it's like ready to go. 3-bedroom flat, 2-bedroom, 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 2-bedroom. Now, by the way, if you like these properties, didn't go and visit them and all the rest of it. Easy way to do something is just send an email into the company and just say, my numbers work at this point, at that level. Is your buyer in at that price? It's an easy one to do. Armchair investing. Don't bother going to see it until they agree round about the price that you're thinking. Once they agree to that price, you go, no bother, I'll pop round and have a look at it, and then we'll just rubber stamp that decision. And typically when you get round there, you've already got it down in price. And typically when you get down there, sometimes actually the owner, if they're doing the viewing with you, apologises and actually decreases the price more. Work that one out. That's why you sometimes want to get you want to do the viewing with the owner. You didn't want to do it on the stage because they just get in the road. Medium 1-bed terrace bungalow. Nah, that's a.
You keep going. Like there's
flat length court. See, they're all flats. There's a glut of flats on the property.
Yeah, there's a lot. Yeah. Now there's one.
Terrace house, Francis Path.
Yeah.
Glenrothes. That looks all right, yeah. That's a goer, isn't it? 80 grand.
I actually let it a good few years ago.
Much would that get?
The 2-bedroom flats now we're getting about now I've got 575 for one of those, but I think you'd probably be getting about 600.
575 to 600. Right, that'll be right. Right, okay. We've got some numbers here. Right. Now let's start crunching, and we'll show you what I'm doing here. And so stop that, and we're going to jump onto my spreadsheet. I'll take these numbers off. It's got 1.9 million in here, and I'll just put 0 in there now, so you didn't see what's going on here. Don't like people to know what I'm doing. Although I'll tell you, but I don't like technically anybody to know what's going on with it. 25. Okay, right. Let's just share this spreadsheet. Here we go. Okay, right. This is my ready reckoner spreadsheet. If anybody knows, if anybody's seen this before, this tells me my cash flow, my tax position, my capital gains, my return on investment, my gross yield after the mortgage is taken off, my overheads, my occupancy rate. The money I need to put in, what my full initial money in the whole deal is in the first place, and what the return on investment is to that. So I've mastered this over the last, it took me 30 years.
Yeah, it works really well. So
I've got it down to the fact that this is the numbers I just need to know. That's it. Yeah. In a nutshell. I don't need to know anything else. Everything else outside of this is pish and waffle.
And it's been, this has proved really useful to a lot of people that we work with, Jim, that we've shared it with.
So let's look at the 50 grand mark.
Yeah.
That's a purchase price. 6% ADS, 25% mortgage. So you'll get a 35.5 mortgage. I think you'll still get that, because it's still a 50 grand purchase,
Mm-hmm.
Somebody out there could maybe tell us something different. Actually, I'll go for the 375. 375 is the rent, because that's the one bedder.
Yeah,
we picked up at the 50 grand. That was ready to go,
Yeah.
You pay 6% ADS. 5. Your arrangement fee for that was 0. There was no arrangement fee, which is handy. Yeah. And that initially, now watch here. I've got 5 point. What we're doing? 5-year fixed rate deal.
5.19.
Now, we're going to assume we're going to buy
Are we doing
a
this
limited
limited
company.
or in their own name?
No, a limited company. We'll go for a 5-year fixed rate deal at 5.89.
5.89, right.
That's why I look at these. And then we'll go through this. Now, we're assuming 375 rent. We've got our 12 months occupied, so fully occupied. Because a way to fully occupy it is, see when you're getting it from the agent and you've agreed the price or agreed with the owner, say to them, you know, if it's empty, is there any chance if I can conclude my SIFs? Remember, do this first.
Yeah.
If there's any chance I can conclude my SIFs as quick as possible, and you can let me in to just do some light refurb work on it.
Yeah.
While we're waiting on the conveyancing going through and everything getting rubber stamped. Concluded missives means you can't back out, so it gives them peace of mind. It'll allay their solicitor, because the solicitors, and plus the fact it'll allay you, because the reality is, if you don't conclude missives and you end up doing it up, they might say, "Oh, well, I've changed my mind," and you've just done their property up for nothing. But hey, I've had that before. I got caught out on that Kirkcaldy High Street when I had a commercial property. I actually spent £5,000 doing it up on the premise that I was going to get plan permission from the council to change a use into an office. And they said no after saying they would say yes. 5,000 out of pocket. So stand by my mistakes, please. Should get something rubber stamped first before you go ahead and commit costs. So you can see the mortgage there. Now the leverage position, it's an 8.3% gross yield if you are buying it cash. If you're using the mortgage, it goes up to 13.9% gross yield with the mortgage. You've leveraged yourself a bit by 6% on your money. Overheads 30%, I always assume that. And you've kind of got a net profit of just under £1,000 once the overheads are taken off. Overheads 30%, and that is basically for insurance, you know, any utilities you've got to pay initially, any initial council tax, your letting agent as well. You're always use a letting agent, for God's sake. You know, didn't try and do it yourself. If you've got plenty of time on your hands and you want to learn all the legislation and you want to go in the ins and outs of it and deal with people on a day-to-day basis like a social worker, then yes, by absolutely become a letting agent or do it yourself.
Also, if you've got apartments and maybe a block with a factoring fee and things as well.
Yeah. So. Well, look at it this way. If you're going to have one property and you don't use a letting agent, you're going to save yourself 15%. So you're going to save your 15%, and that 15% of this figure, 450 times 0.15, because the 15% includes the VAT. 600. You're going to save yourself £675 a year. Now divide that by 52 weeks equals you're saving yourself £13 a week by not using a letting agent.
Yeah,
£13 a week. That's 1 hour of somebody's time, even if they're doing a basic job. So £13 an hour. That's 1 hour of your time you're doing every week. You're investing 1 hour of your time. Now, if you can make more than £13 an hour out of the time, and you're only spending 1 hour a week on this property at the most, at any point in time over the whole year, then do the thing yourself.
Yeah,
I'll guarantee you, you'll spend more than 1 hour a week at a time.
Yeah, definitely.
Especially if you're getting broiled with a tenant phoning you back and forward all the time for repairs and improvements, getting contractors and all the rest of it. It's just madness. Yeah. Go out and earn a salary and you'll make more money that way and pay somebody else to manage this. That's another story. So the payback, the return on net return on your deposit on the money you've got in, which is the initial equity of £1,000 you had to do your legals, the £3,000 for your stamp duty, and the deposit of 12.5 that you put down, you've got 16,500 in already, 5.7% return, 18-year payback. That would be. Now, over a period of 10 years, assuming your property price will increase by 5% every year, you could change that if you want, but I'm saying 5% every year from the initial 5% at the beginning. I'm not actually compounding it up. So I'm not doing 5% of 5% of 5% of 5%. So by the time you get to year 10, you're sitting, the 5% is actually about 8 or 10%. I'm not doing it like that. I'm just doing 5% of the initial. So it actually works out and smooths over a period of time. I've found anyway. So if you did nothing and didn't take any money back in an ideal world, the return on investment over a 10-year period would be over 200%. You see that 209 down there?
Yeah.
But the thing that you've got to think about now is your risk, your stress testing.
Yeah.
What happens if occupancy rate drops? So just drop it to 8% and see where you come out even. 8 months, right?
8 months.
£108, drop it to 7 months. You're at minus 300. So 8 months. So basically, your occupancy rate could afford to drop to 8 months. In other words, 4 months of the year, you wouldn't have this occupied, or potentially you wouldn't have rent paid for 4 months of the year. Could you survive an eviction? No. You'd be losing money. If you had an eviction and your tenant didn't pay the rent anymore, you wouldn't survive, because this only goes 4 months in this scenario, in these numbers, and that's not even that's how you couldn't survive, because it takes 6 months to 6 months arrears to do that. You've got to build up 6 months arrears before you can actually evict anybody at this point in time. Then you've got to apply to court, the tribunal. So these are all the warning signs for people in buy to let. It's not for the faint-hearted, and I'll tell you that. I've been doing it for 30 years. I should know. So 12, and it's also why you get a specialist letting agent, because they vet people out to make sure they get the right tenants. Do you know, managing yourself, you're 250% more likely to get rent arrears than you are with using a letting agent?
Yeah, I was just having that conversation before we come on the show with a lady about the initial referencing and finding the right people at the beginning, and the importance of that, especially when we're in this situation now with the moratorium and things in place. You really need to pick the right people. That
moratorium on evictions will continue to go. That rent freeze, or the rent cap from the 1st of April, will continue to go. I'm going to put my rents up. Okay, but you've got 3 months before you can put your rents up. After the 1st of April, you have to apply. But you can, it's going to take 3 months to get 3% even. But if you want the 6% or anything in between, you have to justify it to the rent assessor. Then you could apply. You can only do it once a year. But the key here is, it's only based on the last 6 months of your costs to prove to the rent assessor. So if your costs went up 12 months ago, or even 7 months ago, you can't use that as evidence to say your costs have gone up in the last 6 months. You're screwed.
Yeah.
So I suggest you probably put your rents up 3% every single year. So one of these things, you're going to have to. We're just going to have to learn to keep doing it now.
Yeah.
The government's taught us to do that, by the way. So it's I'll put the blame on Patrick Harvey. I never used to increase my rents, but because Patrick thought what he's done, I have no choice but to do that. It's on Patrick Harvey's watch that's happened. So here's another stress test: the rent. So what if it happens if the rent drops? For example, what happens if it drops to £300? Okay, you're still breaking even. You're still at £311 net profit, if anything. So you're just breaking even, and you could probably get away with 11 months occupancy on that.
Yeah,
because there's 311 in there. Your return on investment is still 170%, because you're making capital appreciation as well over the next 10 years on that assumption. But you can change these numbers about if you want. So I can put it back to 375. So that gives you a degree of tolerance. Now, for me, that's uncomfortable. I don't like that scenario. So I wouldn't go for a one-bed flat at 375, especially if the electric's not there. So let's look at the 475, because it's 50 grand again. It's the same interest rate, and let's do 475, because that's a two-bedder we're talking about.
Is this the one the one in Buckhaven?
Yeah.
Yeah. Was that number 44?
Oh, that's Buckhaven. Sorry, there was one there at 50 grand as well. We looked. It was maybe, oh, jeez, I can't remember where it was. Kirkcaldy somewhere.
That was Pratt Street.
Kirkcaldy. 475. You can see the numbers pan out right in front of you there.
Yeah.
Your return on investment, net return on investment, is, well, look at your leverage. Your cash position, you've now got £290 a month after the mortgage is paid in cash to cover your overheads. Your gross yield as a cash purchase is just under 11%. Your gross yield with mortgage goes up to 21% using the bank's money. You've leveraged yourself by 11% there. 30% overheads again. You're coming out a net profit of £1,781 on that property, which represents just under 11% net deposit, a 9-year payback, return on investment over 10 years, 259%.
That's good.
Now, if you have to put a wee refurb in there, maybe stick another maybe put 4,000 in, so put that in. Your return on investment drops to 8.7 because you've got more money in the deal, but you've still only left 20 grand in. You've got a nice flat now because you've spent 4 grand on the improvements, just doing it up, changing worktops, maybe changing doors in the kitchen, maybe changing the kitchen itself. I think that was that one.
Yeah,
potentially.
which is definitely the thing. I mean, that's going to be worth it if you make that property
You
look
might
good.
want to do
You're
like
going
a paint yourself, because you
Yeah.
could do painting. You're maybe really good at painting. I tell you what, if you're crap at painting, don't do it.
do it.
Just look
Yeah.
shoddy.
Yeah,
And then it gives the tenant permission as well to go and paint, because you've done a shoddy job as well.
Yeah.
With paint everywhere. So they just go, well, I could paint. And then you go, no, you're not meant to. And it's like, well, your painting was crap. So I think anything that I've done's probably improved it.
Yeah.
I couldn't disagree with that, by the way. So if you're going to do painting and you're good at it, then mask it and cut it all in and all the rest of it. Get it perfect. Get the inventory done at the beginning of the condition report. Therefore, they're liable to return it back to what it was. So change that back to 1,000. So there's a scenario. So let's play with numbers again in that scenario. We looked at it before.
You've left that at 5.
You could put that down to 300.
You've left that at 5 instead of the 1.
What's that? Sorry.
You've left that at 5,000. You were putting it back to 1,000.
No, I was going to leave it like that, Richard.
All right, okay. Sorry.
And the 475, and if you put that 475, say you only got a 1-bedroom allowance because somebody was in there, so you put a 375, you're still going to survive. Your net profit's just under 1,000.
Yeah.
Your 4.6% return on your deposit, your money in. Your return on the 10 years is 168%. And so you can afford to rent a 1-bedroom or a 2-bedroom property if it came to it.
I mean, that's never going to happen with a 2-bedroom in Kirkcaldy. So, but I mean,
well, don't knock it, because there was a time, mind, where there was an oversupply of rental property at one point in time. So,
but like you say, it's good to prepare.
And I did start to put people in for 2 beds and a 3-bed, because just to get the rent and to cover overheads.
Rather than it being empty.
Yeah, and it made sense. So you've got to plan for things like this. It could happen. So move that back to 475. If you do get 475 for it, you've got a real degree of tolerance here. Put it in 6 months. Yeah, break even 6 months.
That's good.
Or 7 months. So 6.5 months. So in other words, you could afford for this to be empty half the year and have no rent for half the year, and you'll still break even. So that's a really good tolerance level for me. Your return on investment, as I said, is reasonable. So that's a really good one there as well. Let's look at the 80,000, the 2-bed.
Yeah.
So we're buying that for 80,000, and that was Craighead.
It was
Kirkcaldy. Craighead, right, yeah.
Okay. I thought we were doing the Victoria Path one.
Well, 6.5 dozen. They're both priced. 575. You said the rent was. Yeah. Well, we use 575. You said 600. You'll probably get for it, and you have done that with me. So for me in the beginning, we said, well, I'll base my figures on 575, and the next minute you got 650. Yeah. Like, what? That's unreal. That's bonus. But that really gives me a good degree of tolerance to have some flexibility if anything happens with the tenant, and also do repairs and improvements over the years, and not worry about, I don't have enough money put aside for it. Remember, there's no arrangement fee in these still, because that's no part of the deal with the mortgage lender. Your gross yield on that, of all money in, I'll put that back to 1,000 for your legals. Your gross yield on that is 8%. Leverage yourself at 13%. Remember, because we've got a higher purchase price now, and higher ADS stamp duty. Leverage 5%. Hey, still leverage yourself against the bank. Overheads 30%. Net profit £1,300 almost. 5% return on deposit. 20-year payback. Makes the flats more desirable, doesn't it? Because when you think about it, 80 grand, you could almost get to the point where you've got, you can another 20 grand, and you've got 2 flats making that type of money. And that's where people don't realise, it's like, if you've got 2 flats generating the same amount of income, if not more, in return on investment than having a house.
One house, yeah.
If one goes down and one still runs, you're okay. One will pay for the other. That's risk analysis.
Yeah.
I keep saying it before. I would rather have 100 Coca-Cola machines producing 1% profit each than actually one Coca-Cola machine producing 100% of the profit. Because if one goes down in the 100% example, your income is wiped out. If 5 go down and the 100 producing 1% each, then only you've still got 95% of your income. So that's what risk analysis is. So stress testing is changing your numbers, like the occupancy rate, like the
mortgage
interest
rates.
rate, like the, well, let's look at the example of the 50 grand. So I think we've proved beyond the shadow of a doubt that, I think we've proved beyond the shadow of a doubt with the numbers that now buy-to-let is perfectly feasible.
Yeah, definitely. And like you say, flats are quite a good. I mean, they're becoming more popular for people anyway because flats and things are more affordable to run from a tenant's perspective. So they are quite popular. And but looking at the numbers here, obviously, they're a lucrative investment as well, as long as you're
Here's the
making
one
sure your
to
numbers.
watch out for. I tell you what, though, especially with homelessness being so high as it is just now, it doesn't matter about the draconian attitude of the government. If your numbers work and homelessness is at a record high, at some point in time, they can't kick the can down the road anymore. They're going to have to deal with it and actually embrace private landlords again and say, you're our saviour.
Yeah.
You know why I know that? Because I've been there before.
I was just going to say, because you've been through it before. Yeah.
I've been through this all before. Two or three times where we've been kicked in the teeth. And then the next minute we've been embraced with open arms and it's like, oh, come and help us. It's like, all right, okay, fine. And if you can weather that storm and you can get used to that way that the government treats you, and just because there's a lot of people actually going, I'm selling up, I just can't take it anymore. It's like, can't take what? What are they doing? They're not doing anything to you.
Mm-hmm.
You're just listening. You're just listening to the hype.
I know, and sometimes people can cut their nose off despite their face and really didn't think it's true because obviously the government changes and things sometimes, and the effects the situation's having on them leaves a bad taste in their mouth, and they just cut their losses. When really stick it out and keep going, you'll see the benefits of it in the long term.
Now I know there's a few questions, and we'll take questions in a minute. But we'll talk about this classic example. Here's the stress test, and there's where it starts as well. When you do, interest rates are going to, we're looking at a 5-year fixed rate deal at 5.89. But what happens when interest rates come out? In 5 years' time, the interest rates might be a lot higher than that now. So this is where you stress test interest rates. So I'll put that up to 8% in this example and see where we are. This is the 50,000 one at 475. Now that 8%, I'm still making 6% return on my money in. I put up to 10. We're at 240. We're breaking even at 10% mortgage rates.
Yeah.
So almost double the amount of what we're getting just now at the 5.89. So I'm comfortable with that. At almost double. That's kind of my tolerance. It's like double interest rates. About a really low rent level. About a 1-bedroom allowance when I've got a 2-bed. Even a 1-bedroom allowance or a 2-bed allowance when when I talk about allowances, I'm going on the local authority
housing allowance. Yeah.
So the local housing allowances are set by the rent assessor. They have been frozen for the last 3 years, and it's what the government will pay for somebody on on benefits.
Yeah.
Now the reason I calculate things on that is because I'm kind of looking at worst case scenario when I do it, and I just think, okay, if the worst case scenario happened, this is what happened, and this is the lowest value rent I can get for a property at this point in time. Where is my degree of tolerance here? Where am I safe, and where am I taking a risk in terms of where I'm planning this? Hence the reason why I work all these numbers and see how low it can go. See, that one can go down to £300 a month, as we said before. Interest rates can go up. The bank might turn around and say, we want a bit more money out of you, and you'll have to say, okay, how much you want? And well, we're not, and you get paid on your mortgage by £5,000, and you put that into 6, and then you see how that affects you there. Put another 6 in, and that's the sort of things you've got to look at. You decide potentially overheads have gone up, because you've had to do repairs and improvements 1 year. So you put the overheads up to 40%, because you've had to do a wee bit more work, maybe about a few £1,000s worth. And that gives you, again, a good net profit. Overheads maybe go up to 60% on that one. That's where it breaks even. See that?
Yeah.
So that's double the overheads of what you're planning. Now, that 30% overheads of the top line rent is actually quite a tolerable level.
Mm-hmm.
And often you could be about 20% or maybe 25%. So you're actually making a saving. So see how I've built a lot of de-risking into this equation in terms of how I've done that. So in essence, I definitely think, and we'll just finish off here and take questions. In essence, I think that buy-to-let is still extremely viable right now. And I've just shown you that.
I was just going to say, you've just demonstrated that quite clearly, Jim, and I think that not just obviously buy to let, but how the rest of the economy have an effect on how you look at your investment and how you assess whether it's going to be a viable purchase, whether it's property. And do you know what I mean? Risk analysis on that. And that was quite a good example. And to everybody that's watching, if you do watch regularly and you want that spreadsheet, speak to me direct, and we could talk about getting that over to you.
Okay. How do we get 1.9 million 100% funded?
Yeah, I was going to say you're going to put that up. Yeah, let's touch on that, Jim, because I think we brought it up on the Saturday show and we said we would cover it at the end here. So,
how do you get 1.9 million? How do you get 100% funding for the bank? That's it in a nutshell. Because everybody keeps saying out there, I can't. How is it possible? Banks will just not give you 100% funding. But banks will give you 100% funding if you can use your existing assets and leverage them against it, and they will give you the 100% funding for what you want to buy. But you have to go to a corporate bank. You can't go to buy-to-let lender. Buy-to-let lenders just don't work like that. Their model is you put 25% down.
Yeah,
I'll put 25. I'll put 75% in, and that's the job done. They want to see your money first, though. You have to appear with the money, and then you can take it back out if you want. So that's how buy-to-let lenders work. Corporate banks are completely different, but they'll only lend to you at 500,000 and upwards. They don't want small beer. They want corporate lending. So if you're buying portfolios or stuff like that, and you've got equity in other properties which have actually built up over the years, this was actually quite interesting because I actually looked on a famous guru. It's out there right now. It's Pratt's, and how they're fantastic at what they do. And then the first thing I did was actually I looked into their accounts and I had a quick look at it. And I thought, wow, this is actually quite startling. I wonder if I've still got this in here, where their accounts are on here.
Just while you're looking for that, Jim, you've mentioned previously that you've worked with the same bank for a lot of years. Do you? I mean, people might be wondering, oh, maybe he gets preferential treatment, or I mean, but you still have to demonstrate that you've got the assets.
You have to clearly demonstrate that you can make these numbers work.
Yeah.
And if you don't do that, you're not getting anything for them. Now, I wonder if I can do this and get this on screen. It's a PDF, and I'll show you what's going on here. Stop sharing that screen. Let's see if I can get this PDF up. This is actually a warning sign. But this guy's a buy-to-let guru, furu, as far as I'm concerned, but that's up to the public to decide. So I'm scrolling through his accounts because right, here goes the story. I'm so successful that I've got, everything going, and I'm building this and all the rest of it. I'm going to sell you courses all the time. And this guy actually makes a fortune out of courses. That's all he does. That's his business. And he takes the money from the courses, I think, and actually invests it into property. So he doesn't do what I did in the beginning. I took what I earned in my normal day-to-day and everything else and leveraged all that against it, and then bought houses at the same time. But I've never ever taught it until I actually demonstrated clearly that I'm at that level. So I looked into their accounts, and this is one of the set of accounts here, which actually threw up warning bells for me, warning signs for me, and alarm bells went off when I looked at the accounts, because it's sailing close to the wind. And in essence, there was about 12 companies all set up, and more or less every single company never had the pot to piss in. In other words, the net worth of the business was actually minus, and some were actually just balance sheet net zero net worth. They were minuscule, and yet probably they'll be going about saying, "Oh, I've got 12 different property companies, and I'm doing this." And it's like the guy the other week that said, "Oh, I've been made managing director of my company," and it's like,
and it's like $5,000 or something.
The only employee of the company. That's why he's managing director. And it's like everybody's congratulating that person, and it's like that's all smoke and mirrors.
Yeah.
It's, so you have to look behind these things. So I thought I'm going to just look at them. Now, public record, you can get all this information on Companies House about everyone. You can get all that information about me as well if you want.
It's all public information.
Yeah. If you have a limited company, you have to file public limited accounts. So therefore, it has to be open to the public. I mean, they'll be abbreviated. You'll see the balance sheet, but I'm smart enough to be able to read a balance sheet and look at the taxes, and that'll tell me how much you're earning, and also the dividend distributions. I can work that out as well from what you're doing. And the alarm bells rang up in this one. This is one of the companies here. Oh, I've got to sign in. Give me a second. I'll sign off and I'll sign in. And then I'll come back to that. Amongst yourself. And that goes forward. We're going to go into that one. Okay, so here we are right here. This is it right here. I don't want to labour on too much about who this person is, but see, look at the net worth of the company. Right there. Investment property 1.5 million, debtors 1.2, creditors 2.6. Total liability, total assets, money, liabilities 200 grand. Creditors amount falling due, basically 56 grand. Yeah?
Yeah, see that. Yeah.
Now, non-distributable reserves, there's the key one here, right here. See that one?
Yeah.
That is the revaluation reserve, more than likely, because it's non-distributable. In other words, you can't put it out in dividends. It's just the revaluation of the property. So that's what's happened here. I think he's dumped some property up the top because it's gone from 2 to 1.5, and it does show disposals, and that's probably where the gains has been made here, because 406,000 loss retained, and then it's gone down to 277, which means that there's been a gain made on disposal of the 500,000 up the top.
Right.
See the top up there, the disposal 500,000, and the difference between the 2 and the 1, and then you've got, that's probably the gain that he made in there. So that he probably made about 130,000. That's why the loss is down to 277.
Right.
But you see, I mean, the net worth has only decreased, and increased by 46 grand. That's nothing to crow about.
No.
That is early days, and yet this business has been going for quite a while. So my worry sign here is when I saw this in there. I'll just take you through it. See, there's the fair value. Look, fair value 2.9, additions, disposals. There you go, the 1 million disposals. I don't know where that's gone to. He's maybe put it somewhere else, and that's maybe proper tax planning. But there's the thing here. Look, valuation, revaluing every year. 163 grand uplift, 128 grand uplift, 43,000 uplift. You know, see how that's getting done, and then the cost of buying. So he's revaluing every single year. Now that to me is a worry. And then I looked at the detail there, and he says, well, they went on to say, well, they've got enough. What they went and said, that they've got enough experience between themselves to provide these valuations.
All right, okay.
So they're bolstering their balance sheet. So if you're taking that 400, if you're taking that money off, the valuation increase that they've got in the balance sheet when you go back to it. So you go back to that valuation increase. I mean, there's 163, there's 3, there's 2, there's 3, there's about 300,000. If you take that 300,000 valuation off of there, that's going to be minus 250 grand.
Yeah.
That's the 300,000, 334 there. That's valuation reserve. Now, that's not anything I've ever taken into account in my balance sheet before. Now, I've done it this year because the bank came in and says, we need professional valuations for you to give you this 1.2.
Yeah.
That was a previous 1.2 I'm getting. We need valuations to do that, professional valuations. And, it's like, okay, then we'll get them then. And I thought, okay, I'll put them through and I'll bolster the balance sheet at that point in time because it reflects what actually happened. But what's happening in that scenario is that person's deliberately doing that every single year to do that. Now, there was one other guy actually this happened to, Andy Shaw. Now, Andy Shaw did this, and he revalued his properties every single year and before the credit crunch. And what he did was he took 1% out to live on every single year. That was his strategy.
Yeah.
And he had 300 properties. Do you know how many he's got today?
Yep.
No. That's called swimming naked when the tide goes out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely getting caught when the tide goes out. Yeah.
That is a very risky strategy. Unless there's something else happening here, which I'm unaware of because I looked at the other companies. Now, it only takes me a few, 30 minutes, 20 minutes for me to to assess that between about 12 companies, because I understand where everything's going, because I'm an accountant by trade. So that's what makes me concerned, but also the very fact that this person's going about teaching other people.
That is a worry. That's a concern.
This is what you do. It's like, holy shit. It's the blind leading the blind.
Yeah, that's not great.
But most people actually get taught how to build portfolios and all the rest of it. You know, they start off well, and they start off all motivated, and then they just deflate, and then they disappear. And to the person that trains them, it's just money for nothing. You're better actually just learning as much as you can out of the books and out of the tapes and out the podcasts that everybody does. And, you know, attend a free show, attend free seminars that you get, at the property investment shows. But for God's sake, don't be foolish enough to be sucked up into the I'm going to make you rich overnight. It's not the thing to do. It just doesn't work. The show I've been, the workshop that I've been to, I paid for the most in terms of buy-to-let investment is Kevin Green, Secret Millionaire. Now, Kevin and I met up in 2009 or something like that. But that was, you know, remember I started in mid-90s.
Yeah.
So that was the first time I'd gone to any investment workshops, because Kevin potentially knew what I knew. Knew something that I didn't know, because Kevin's got a huge portfolio in terms of how he built it. And then I began to learn things off of him as well. Now, I know Mark Wilkinson's actually been taught by Kevin as well. So Mark Wilkinson's actually in buy-to-let, including, so he started a wee bit, he started probably in the last 10 years, within the last 10 years. But there's nothing much that I don't know that nobody else is already teaching. And we're spreading this word for free. So just plug into these seminars, plug into these shows, and you'll get to learn buy-to-let anyway. There's loads and loads of episodes on here about how to do that, and what's happened in the past, and how I'd got my journey. And inspirational as well is the fact that you can go from homeless and unemployed in your early 20s to then being retired, you know, a millionaire at 38-year-old.
38, yeah.
And I'm not trying to sell anybody anything. That's the thing.
No.
I'm just trying to teach people. I'm just trying to teach people to create wealth for themselves, because I didn't have anybody to teach me. I just had to make everything up as I went along, because there was nothing like that at that time when I first started. Buy-to-let mortgages never existed. You had to borrow everything on term loans through banks.
Yeah.
So I've learned all the hard way.
Yeah. Well, there is a lot of good content in these, and I think, like you say, Jim, with the way things are heading in the future, people do need to be more conscious of creating their own wealth and looking after themselves and their families and things for future generations. And like you say at the beginning, notepad and pen. I don't know if people notice, even I sit and scribble notes as we go through this, because I mean, there's always something to learn, and there's always something to retain and implement.
Every time we come on the show, this is all unscripted, by the way. There's no script in here at all. Every time we come on the show, I think, God, what am I going to talk about? And we just have a few subjects, and I think, flows, and then we're now 90 minutes in.
I know, yeah.
And we're like, right, we better wrap this up.
It's been a good one today, though, Jim, and you've covered quite a lot, and like I say, how the whole economy and things all kind of ties up, and how it all affects each other, which I think is good. So you want to run through questions that you got tipped up and things? I did
notice there's a couple of times we don't need to put anything on screens, but there's a gentleman on here. You know, thanks very much for your comments. Really have that. Yeah, very handy.
That's Victor.
Skills and accounting, Victor. You know, I understand you call it a deal analyzer, but what I do is not a deal analyzer. It's a risk assessor. It assesses the risk, and that's all it's meant to do. It's not meant to analyse whether it's right or not. It's to assess all the risk and the tolerances involved. And that's why I call it a ready reckoner for that reason. Deal analyzers, it's jargon. It's used by a lot of investment gurus in that phrase. And they say that, but sometimes it's not as it is. So it's almost like saying, I sometimes get it where everybody says, well, does every estate agent know the same? All right, okay. So how many estate agents do you know it does video walkthroughs and talk-ups and drone footage with digital animation on it? How many estate agents do you know it do that? None. None in the whole of the UK, more than likely. Nobody in the UK does what we do. And yet, I'm at pains to tell people, it's like we're on a different field completely to everybody else in terms of what we are doing, how we're doing it. You know, we all think we're on the same playing field, and no, we're not. No, we're not. I'm on a completely different playing field.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll never catch up with us in terms of what they're doing. Because I'm doing something, I'm moving on to the next steps while they're trying to catch up. That's every single time. Always be a way ahead of everybody else and be a disruptor in your market. Let's take some TikTok comments. There's quite a bit. I think I'd said that about the Great Depression, Alan. It's not really a depression, I don't think. I think we'll all survive. Not sure what Ryan, I'm not sure what you were meaning by nothing for 20% these days. I'm not really sure what you were saying with that, because I've lost my train of thought. Who's doing the best buy-to-let mortgages just now? AJ's asking. It's probably the Mortgage Works or Birmingham Midshires. They're probably the two best ones out there. But again, speak to mortgage brokers. Ketter, Salimi, Freedom Financial, Dundee. He does buy-to-let mortgages. That's all he does.
Yeah,
that is his speciality. He specialises in that market.
He's gotten a few good deals for some of my investors and landlords recently. They've come back to me and they're amazed at what they've been able to get.
There's nothing better than specialisation. People that specialise in their field become experts in their field, and therefore you benefit by that expertise for what you're doing.
And like you said as well, Jim, Kessler, like these independent brokers and things get deals that aren't going to be available through the high street banks and things.
This is a tough one. Is there a minimum amount of properties you need to rent out to get the best tax breaks in Scotland? Jeez. If you're a higher rate payer, it's a difficult one. It really is all based on your income and what you've got coming in elsewhere. If you've got nothing at all, no income coming in, this is what you're relying on every single time, then if you're only wanting 2 or 3 properties, I would probably end up buying them in my own name, because you're not really going to lose out, because you're not going to push yourself into the higher rate tax brand. Therefore, any 20% deduction you're going to get from financing your properties at under Section 24, then it's just going to be the same amount as you would get normally anyway, offset against your revenue. If you're working alongside a limited company, and then you've got to work out where you've got to work out and plan. And now we've done this on previous shows, AJ. We've done it on previous shows, so watch back the playlist in here on our YouTube channel on the Wealth Creation Show, and I do talk about it, about the points where you want to minimise your tax and want to plan tax properly. And that means actually working out where you're going to be just before the year end and assessing whether you should actually be doing your repairs a bit earlier now on some of your properties, or you should maybe be putting a contribution into your personal pension to bring yourself down to a low rate band, because that would work. Yeah. So I've done it. I've put a personal contribution in for this year, because I know what I'm getting paid from my job, and I know what I'm getting paid in my dividends. So I know what my tax is going to be at the end of the year. I've already worked it out, and I know what I needed to put in my personal pension then to bring myself down to the low rate tax. And that was before I started the beginning of the tax year. That was April last year. I worked all that out beforehand. So I know when the time was right, I was able to buy when the stock market was low, because I invest in UK equities in my pension. So I was able to buy when it was down at the 7,000 mark. Now it's at 8,000. Happy days. I made $5,000 in the last 2 weeks. I never made it, but you know what I mean? My pension went up $5,000 in 2 weeks. It's like, what?
That's mental.
$5,000. That's mental.
Yeah.
But if you understand how that all works, and equally it could go down $5,000. Hey, the stock market could crash. I couldn't care less. I'm not taking out there now anyway, so it makes no difference, and it'll recover again. There was no doubt, and I keep saying it before. There's no doubt when a disaster struck. When we got the pandemic and the stock market tanked, right? I immediately ran in and bought stock when it tanked to its bottom. Yeah. And everybody goes, it's got a long way to go. And I'm not caring. It's going to recover back to 7,000 anyway. And I'm not needing it anytime soon. So I ran in straight away and bought shares. In a portfolio through Standard Life. Now, whether you like Standard Life or not is a different story, but it's the very fact that it's a UK equity fund in blue chip stock. And they're all cast iron. They're like Diageo. They're like Glencore. They're like the pharmaceuticals. All the blue chip stock companies. So it made absolute sense for me to buy. So when the stock market does tank, I immediately jump in and start buying at the lower end because I know it's going to recover over the medium to long term, and it always has. So I wouldn't say there's a minimum amount. I just says it depends on your requirements to get the best tax breaks and how you can do that. Depends on what your other situation is.
Depends on your individual situation. Yeah.
Oh, where in Fife is the cheapest for property? Probably Methil.
Yeah. Buckhaven.
Methil, Buckhaven. But I tell you what, it's a really good area. Despite that, because everybody goes, oh, cheap property problems and all that. Nothing like that at all. No, didn't have any problems like that at all. It's a real good one, and especially with the very fact that the train station goes in 2024.
Yeah.
So people walk from Methil to get the train to Edinburgh.
Yeah.
And Methil's right round the corner for the A915 on the Stansdale, which goes on the A92, which is great for commuting as well.
The commute to Edinburgh and things for there is hardly anything.
There'll always be a need for properties in that area because it's really, there's not enough housing there. It has been built over the years. There's not been enough housing built in Methil, and it's purely because the cost to build was far outweighed for the price that you'd get at the end, and that's why nobody's built in the Methil area for years, and it's been completely neglected for that reason. So when you're buying and doing a property in there, it's always in high demand for rent.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Is it worth buying a student flat in one of the student and one of the student blocks? I don't know. It just depends on the numbers, whether it's worth it. If it's just a student flat and it's just one student that's going to be living in it, it's a bit of certainty. I mean, we've got students living in our properties. Yeah. Some actually pay a year's rent up front. Some people are cast iron. They've got guarantors with their mother and father who are cast iron guarantors. That's a no-brainer.
I've got ones like that just now. It's there's two of them, and there's both sets of parents are going to be guarantors.
Wish more people would rent out. Yep, absolutely. We need more. I'm entitled to a 2-bed. My sons are 2 and almost 15. It's ridiculous. Yeah, you're entitled to a 2-bed. Yeah, I'm only entitled to a 2-bed. When the other son turns 16, that's when it goes to a 3-bed, doesn't it, Richard? Yeah. Because it's same sex under the rules for local housing allowance. It's same sex are 1-bedroom up to 16 years old, the age group. Different boy and a girl are 10-year-old. Is it? Yeah, 10-year-old. So you can have a bedroom each under the local housing allowance. So when he hits 16, you're entitled to a 3-bedroom allowance, so you can actually move on to that. But if you're entitled to a 2-bedroom allowance, I'm assuming that you're on local housing allowance or housing benefit, because the way you're wording that. And if you weren't, apologies, but I'm assuming for people out there that are there, are on that. So it could be a 2-bedroom allowance is actually still quite tolerable for a 3-bedroom. Because I mean, I've got a 3-bedroom, a couple of 3-bedrooms that I would rent for a 2-bedroom allowance. It wouldn't bother me because the return on investment's there for me still, and it's something I'd be happy to do myself personally, just to get the right tenant, to get
for the right person. That's what I was just going to say.
It doesn't bother me. It's like, I know we talk about maximising returns and investment and stuff like that, but at heart, I'm really probably quite social in terms of being a landlord. I'm happy to rent if people are wanting to further themselves, get on in their education, or do better for themselves and help somebody out get onto that ladder. To be better overall, because it provides for their family as well. And I know tenants have actually done that and come with me and had that degree of tolerance with me, and that social aspect that I've done, and they've gone on to get some really good jobs, and I speak to them today for that reason.
Yeah.
I wish I could buy. Well, that's it. Done.
Good.
We're finished.
No, that was really good. There's a lot, like I say, Jim, there's a lot of good content today and in the previous shows. But you've got them on the playlist. But if you're watching
there's an article we did, and I'll stick it in the comments. I obviously can't do it on Instagram and TikTok. But I'll stick it in the comments, and it was one of the blogs that we did. Is buy to let still worth it? It's still worth the risk. It was another way of looking at this podcast as well on there. So if you get a chance, you could stick on the link below and listen to it.
Yeah,
that's us.
Right, okay, Jim, thanks very much. Thanks everybody for watching, and obviously your comments and interaction, it's always appreciated. And we will see you next week for the next episode of the Wealth Creation Show.
Yeah.
I'll send out what the topics and things will be before then, so people know.
I'll tell you what, if you're looking to get advice and information from us, then please feel free. There's for to contact Richard. It's just richard.cook@fifeproperties.co.uk. And just send an email to Richard, and he'll touch base with you and give you some more information about how we can help you. That's it, really. It's no a sell, by the way. We're not trying to sell you anything when we say how we can help you. It's just actually, see what your thoughts are, see where you want to go, see how we can maybe
even if it's pointing you in the right direction,
pointing in the right
financial advice or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Jim. Right, that's great. Thanks very much. I will